Pop in, say hi. If you've never come into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. This is my second show. I have a show that I do Monday to Fridays. What's my good cheer? I've been doing this show. Oh my goodness, I've got to think that I've been doing this show for 5 or 6 years now. Uh, for the first few years, I did it on Instagram. In practicing that craft, it was kind of crazy town for me. I had just decided in the path and the direction that I wanted to go in. I didn't know whether or not that I could do it, if I had the gumption, if I had the time, even because I was starting all of this in my late 50s. And because I want to prove to people that they can do it themselves, I wanted that to be the evidence. I wanted what I was doing to be the evidence that it can be done, that you can be at the lowest of the lows, right? That you can be at the lowest of the lows, that you might not think that you have one single thing to contribute, but you do. Everybody does. And so I decided to go kind of big. I don't know. I'm not usually, I'm well, maybe I am a little bit, but yeah, I went big. And like I said, I don't know if I have the gumption, maybe, right? I'm optimistic that I do, but I don't know what it entails. I'm moving forward constantly, always, right? Even unsure of what the next step is going to be, where the next cliff is, where the next pothole is going to be, what it's going to entail in my own life, because I want to enjoy. There's no point if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. It can't just be for survival, because this is something that I've chased after: safety and survival and adapt and conquer. This is what I've done my entire life. I'd like to be in something. I'd like to create something. I'd like to contribute to something that's going to contribute something magnificent to the world. And whether I do that myself or I'm part of the support system, right? I'm part of the cheerleading squad. I'm part of the practical labor, right? Because all of it matters when you have a goal, when there's something important that that if there's any possible way, then you're going to have to put that effort in. You're going to have to try. Now, it doesn't mean beat yourself up, because again, right? You got to enjoy what you do. You have to love what you do. So whatever I'm doing, it involves YouTube, obviously. And because I'm so deep in the lessons and not able to consistently get out in the back road at all times, because it's exploring the inside and the outside, right? I do the best that I can in that. And like I said, in wanting and expecting for myself to be that evidence for others that it can be done. But we have to recognize that we can't just sit in one spot and go, I wish, I dream, I want, and expect that big stack of money or that new job or that new mansion or that RV, like myself, the RV, that you want, that it's just gonna happen. I recognize that we don't have all the answers, right? That in this moment, there are things that I don't have, that I want, that I feel that I need, I feel I deserve, right? And I want them. But at the same time, I have to recognize, right? It's in those prerequisites. It's what you give to the world. right? I really believe in this idea of you get what you give. You know, when I first started this last job that I had, one of the biggest lessons in that job was to recognize that you get what you give. I was working with a great team. I was happy in that job. It was fun. It was challenging. And I felt like part of a community in that. So, in my happiness, right, things go smoothly, problems roll out, right? And you're on top of the game. But we have to understand that life is always changing, and all it takes is just one problem one problem that somebody thinks that there's no possible way that they can get out of it or we can get out of it as a team, and it leads to being open to negative, because when you're negative, right, you're just negative, and that's all you're going to draw towards you, right? But in that positive, and the amount of compliments, not to my horn, but just in telling the story, but the compliments that I would get, and the way we worked as a team, it was pretty special, right? It was pretty special. And I was happy, like I said, in feeling that it was good. But sometimes, again, like I said, it could just be one person, one one bad moment, one piece of bad news, and it sets somebody backwards, and it takes the whole team down, right? And so I find myself quite often just kind of bumbling along on my own in this moment, because it's what my situation is calling for me to do, right? I'm not charming. I'm not expending my energy at work and dispersing it into the community, which I love to do, which was the reason why I recognize that you get what you give. And what I gave to that community, it all came back to me tenfold, right? Even in how that job ended, it was magnificent. It was something that I'll be able to tell stories about along the way. And because of my own beliefs that, we're going to bump into these characters, these people, maybe not those characters, there'll be different characters, but there'll be characters, right? Somewhere down the road, it might not even be in this lifetime, right? You never want to end a relationship in a bad way that makes somebody ticked with you or want to have revenge, or right. It's all in our attitude. How we leave somewheres is just as important as how we how we come in. And it follows us from one relationship to the next, right? Not if it's even just word of mouth, or family members saying something, but only in your own attitude. Because if you didn't resolve it in the last relationship, what makes you think that you're going to resolve it in the new relationship? Hello, Kathy. Hello, Owen. Hello, Andrew. I hope everybody is having an amazing week. But attitude is everything. And sometimes, and it's not, I'm always for being genuine, right, when you can, and it's something I bring to the table when I come here. But sometimes in our nervousness, sometimes in not having the answers, that we kind of puff ourselves up in some way. But we all have issues, we all have handicaps, we all have problems and mental issues and emotional issues. right? Just some of us, we talk about it. Some of us, we don't talk about it. Some of us, we just toughen up and suck it in and squash it down and choke on it. And some of us, we just let it out, right? But even in those bad moments when we're not feeling good, and there were lots when I was working in that job, I tell you, it was crazy town sometimes. But I'm grateful that I had a job that I was able to, just in my own instincts, manage to do a good job in, right? Because, in that repeat, things get to be easy, easy, easy. And because of the community, your community lifts you too, right? But it was crazy town back then. And right, I'm really kind of grateful for the lessons of that job. Grateful that I paid attention, because the lessons being in the experiences, even though I kind of knew it through, right, my own experience, but it wasn't a lesson until, quite recently, maybe this year or last year, right? So fairly new, and it is all wrapped up in your attitude, because you gotta, when you hide things, right? When you're feeling sad, when you're heartbroken, when you don't want your friends to know that somebody passed away because it's a wedding or something, you don't want to ruin things, that we put on these happy faces. And when I think about that, when I say that, because it's not really genuine, isn't it? But it's kind, is what it is. It's kind. My father was really big on little white lies. And, right, there was lots of lying going on in my family. But, right, the little white lies, my dad was really kind, right? Well, lots of times he kind of changed the subjects and stuff. But when he would lie, they were always such beautiful white lies, right? When somebody walked by, right, and they had eyeshadow out to their ears, and lipstick all smudged over, and maybe wearing a funky outfit, he would lay it on so thick with these women. The women loved my dad, right? And he would make them feel so good. And I thought that was such an amazing trait of my dad. Yes, it was a lie, right? And a little white lie is still a lie. But at the same time, I have to consider the fact that maybe these were women that never ever got any attention, that maybe they got some slap back, some mean comments and stuff like that. Because, when my dad did that, it was always, always his intent for the people that he was interacting with to feel good, even if he wasn't feeling good. My dad had congenital disease, and I remember him leaning over the fence and schmooing the ladies and the gentlemen, right? He liked to have gentlemanly conversations if they were intelligent. But yeah, and he would be really, really sick, and he'd have these little mini heart attacks and stuff, angina he'd have, and they were constant. Towards the end, they were just scary and numerous times a day, right? You never knew when the big one was coming, or if we were in it in the moment and had to be ready to get my dad to the hospital. But even in his own discomfort, he always thought to take care of other people's needs. And you might not think telling a little white lie to somebody in a funky outfit and some crazy blue eyeshadow is right. But right, it made somebody feel good. And if that feel good could have been the one thing that stopped them from going home and crying their eyes out and giving up on dressing up, right? that maybe they had the confidence, and somebody else says something mean and says, I'm not paying his attention. Remember that handsome man, right? He liked the way I looked. And, so sometimes we have to bring that ungenuine to the table for the benefit of a whole. Actually, you know what? Here's an even better one. My dad, it was probably 5 or 6 years after my father passed away that my mother told me in a conversation that my dad was a drinker. You would never have known it. I don't remember my dad ever drinking. In fact, he had a great big Texas Mickey of tequila that he had it displayed on the TV like it was a trophy. Us kids emptied it, drank it, had a party at the house when they went to Reno. Yeah, as teenagers, they would do that, just leave us at home. We drank it, filled it up with water and food coloring. It was funny. It's not like my dad didn't know what we had done, even breaking the seal on the. We're stupid kids. All we're thinking is, oh, we're having a party. We got to have alcohol, right? 15, 16 years old. And we drank that. And we never got in trouble. My dad didn't say one, but that was the thing in our family. Like, I always got in trouble for the things that, weren't my fault. But when I did something bad, I never got in trouble. I never ever got in trouble. And, there are lessons in that too, in keeping us in the negative, right? If once you're in the negative, you're open to that, right? And, I was meant to stay as negative as I possibly could so that, I was tolerable, right? Within my own family, I had two parents who were on two ends of this spectrum, literally, and in that adapting and people pleasing and stuff, sometimes that just wasn't enough. Sometimes it was just a matter of just making sure that, right, it's a different story now. It's a different story now. But going back to this story about being genuine, I didn't believe it. My mother, I don't think would have ever said that to me if it wasn't the truth. My mom was a pretty good liar too, but something like that about my dad, she wouldn't have lied about that. And she said my dad was a drinker, but my dad refused for his kids to ever see him drunk because my grandfather was a raging alcoholic, like one of those really bad ones that live in bus shacks and stuff. That was my grandfather, right? It's just passed down from one generation to another. But listen to this. My dad did not ever want his kids to see him drunk. That's why I was in so much shock. I couldn't believe it when my mother told me that my dad was a drinker, right? But you think about his lifestyle and stuff, it kind of makes sense that he was, right? That he was because he was so social that right now as an adult, you think, yeah, he was a pretty good social drinker, but he never, right? We called the ambulance on him one time because he was passed out drunk in the bathroom. But because we had never seen my dad drunk before, we didn't know he was passed out drunk. We thought he was having one of his heart attacks and he was dying. So we phoned the ambulance on him. And it turned out that he was drunk, but we just passed it off. It was close to a holiday or it was somebody's birthday. It was, one of those, right? We'd never seen my dad passed out drunk, let alone drunk. But here's the kicker in telling that story. Because my dad lived that way, because he did his darndest and succeeded in not letting his kids see that he was also a drinker, maybe not as bad as my grandfather, right? But he was a drinker. And None of his four girls drink. Socially, we go to the bar. I worked in a bar for 15 years, right? And alcohol was never my thing. And I attribute to that to the example my dad set for his own family, for his own kids. So sometimes, right, in not getting back to this idea about being genuine, right? Sometimes we have to be ungenuine for the benefit of the whole, and whether that whole is you or your family or the company you work for, right? And I say that and it's shameful, right? Because lots of people go to work hung over or still drunk, right? But we just have to recognize is right in that patterning. Are they able to get their job done? Are they able to do it safely so they're safe and the people they work with are safe? Are they doing it in a way that they're not saying mean things to the people that they're working for, right? Are they eating lots of mints and are they trying to wake up, right? Are they able to do their job? And then make a decision there, right? Because everybody is handicapped. Everybody everybody has problems, right? And that's sometimes where we fail ourselves in being ungenuine in that. But if you can be ungenuine and not cause damage to your kids, to your family, to your coworkers, right? I would have to say that's pretty decent because we are who we are surrounding ourselves with. And I I wouldn't want my kids, if I had kids, to be around people who were constantly being drunk and inorderly or right, like you are who you surround yourselves with. And uh I can't say it's all bad because lots of experiences lie in who you surround yourselves with, because you can eliminate the possibilities by surrounding yourself with groups that possibly you didn't pick out, somebody else picked out for you, right? You can't play with those kids. You can play with those kids, though, right? My parents weren't like that. We had free choice. And, I think my father was happy if I had friends at all, but we didn't even really try that hard to have friends because we moved so much. Like, once, twice a year growing up, we moved. So there wasn't a lot of time for bonding. We managed somehow, but there really wasn't that amount of time for bonding. And each move made me a little bit more eccentric. We'll just leave it eccentric like that, because you have different experiences every time you make a move. It's change, right? It's what Cindy promotes. But 11 schools, right? Even before you hit high school, that's a little bit much, right? That's a little bit crazy town in that, right? But change is necessary. I'm going live on Instagram on Wednesday. I have not been live on Instagram in 2 years. Um I don't know how I'm playing it out. I'm still filling out the details on that. I think I'm just going to go in and pull a card, right? And maybe invite people in and I'll pull a card for them. Maybe I can do it like that. But only once a week. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to bring, right? I don't want to bring strangers into my life because you never know who you're going to bring in, right? And I love people. I love talking to people, but I would like to know a little bit about something. I would like to at least have a picture of what somebody looks like, right? Uh, Before I go all in. And that was an aspect. I wasn't so much in the Instagram to be talking to people I didn't know. I believe moving forward it's going to be an aspect of what I do, but I want to do it in a natural, comfortable, friendly, friendly way. Somebody's yelling out there. We got snow on the ground, you guys. The snow's on the ground. It's winter time. Winter time now. It's -9 Celsius. It's -9 Celsius, and yeah, this snow is not going to be melting. I'd be very surprised if we have a slushy day moving moving forward. Okay, you guys. Oh, hi, Earl. Earl's been coming into my What's Good Cheer. It's nice to have you here, Earl. This is my Sunday. This is my Sunday night crew. They've been hanging out here with me. Oh goodness, most of them 8 years maybe, like with in the live shows, right? For a very very long time. But everybody, this is Earl. Um, what does Andrew say here? If being ungenuine, maybe it could be said we are sometimes compartmental. Oh, big word here, Andrew. Compartmentalized, showing or not showing parts of ourselves. That's true too. I really, right? No, I'm not, well, I shouldn't say anything like that because I don't know how I can say it without being negative. But I used to work in a very popular retail lumber store, and it was very corporate. It was very coming in the morning and holding hands and kumbayaing and very technical, very punctual, very they spent more time in staff education and training and with salesmen. They had classrooms and stuff in there than we actually did in selling stock. I have no idea. Well, it was a big company, so I'm assuming that they still made their money, but it could have been more financially efficient. uh, but at the same time, we became knowledgeable in the stock, right? uh, but yeah, compartmentalized, that's a good word there, Andrew. And it was part of why I loved my last job too, right? Where I could actually be myself. It's why I love bartending and waitressing. It's because I could be myself. It was a little bit different when I was in the stores, right? Or not the stores, in the restaurants, only because there's protocol in restaurants, the uniforms, the presentation of the menus, how we cook everything, how we seat people, right? It has to be a well oiled machine. But I had a pretty well oiled machine going on at my last job. It was just a matter of getting people to know what their responsibilities were, right? And then just leave everybody alone to take pride in their work. And if they fell behind in the work, you gave them a hand, knowing that when you fell behind in your work, that they were going to jump in and give you a hand too, right? But yeah, I know what you're saying there, Andrew. How many cats do you have there, Earl? um, Instead of being ungenuine, I hope that makes more sense now. Um, yeah, so that's what I just wanted to just say, about changing your attitude, right? That I really saw the evidence and how well it does. People are more than happy to approach people and have conversations and make friends with and be a good coworker out, and lend you their umbrella when it's raining outside, or give you a ride home. It was something that my husband was so good at. It was one of his characteristics that I love so much about him, was the fact that he always knew ahead of time. My sister Tracy's like this too, right? Knows ahead of time what somebody is going to need. And he would always offer it up, whether it was money or his time or his muscles, right? That he always jumped in and made it feel like the person that he was helping was doing him a favor. And he did. He felt that way, right? It was an experience that he was having. They're going to have a good time. If I help Joe move, there's probably going to be some pizzas and a case of beer. It's going to be a good time. Better than sitting at home on the couch watching football by yourself. Go off and have some fun with your friends and live your life and have those experiences. But the thing is, when he did that for others, oh my goodness, whenever we got ourselves in a bind, right? And I would be fault to that, right? Because lots of times I would have bad VLD days and have no idea how I was going to put gas in the car and stuff. And we both made lots of money. Oh my goodness. We both made, I'd have to say close to five, or I think I made a little bit more than he did. We were bringing in about $15,000 a month. Let's just say we were doing really, really, really well, but we blew that money away, right? We were irresponsible, 100%. We tried, right? But I didn't get any lessons in finances. I had no hopes for my future. I never thought I was going to get married. I didn't think that was in the cards for me. And because, right, I by that time I was already a VLT addict. I just blew money like it was nothing in that. I didn't learn anything. I'm better now. I'm better now because I understand what the stress of not being on top of your responsibilities are. So I try really hard to, at the very least, keep the bills paid. And this is what I'm doing in the reselling, is basically keeping groceries in the cupboard, and every little bit of extra that goes on the um, utilities, right? My internet, my phone. And I've been doing pretty decent at that. I'd like to say I made that decision, right? I don't want to dilly dally. I got things to do. And if I know that I'm not going to go back to work, right, the 9 to 5, working for the man, if I could be an entrepreneur and bring on clients for myself, right, or go work for a big firm or a big corporation that, right, works in my field, right, or by the off chance my channel takes off and I get to hit the road, right, for my retirement in my RV, then I've got stuff to do and I've got to utilize that time properly and not put it off saying, oh, I got to go back to work, and then just put off doing anything. So we're going to start Wednesday. We're going to be back on we're going to be back on Instagram. I'm actually going to be setting up my brand, and just seeing, where I really want to take this, right? I'm still showing up, right? Sundays I'm always going to be here. Going to be a little 90-year-old lady sitting in my, not a rocking chair, but I'll be in a comfy office chair sitting here. And what that technology is going to be, I have no idea. I have no idea what the future is going to look like. We moved pretty fast in the past 20 years, didn't we? The past 20 years, we have all pretty much gotten online, right? I know everybody here, at the very least, is on YouTube and is interacting socially here every Sunday, right? On my channel. So I super appreciate that. An 89 Cadillac. I was just watching a Instagram video of a man who just found a Cadillac in the garage. It was a really old one. I think that one was also from the 80s, and he bought it off his friend because his friend couldn't make the payments on it, and the battery died, and he put it in his garage, and he just left there. He just left it there, and it just recently, it was like this much worth of dust sitting on the top of it, but they yanked it out and they gave it a good shampoo inside and outside. All the rat's nest changed, had to change a few hoses because the hoses were like hard plastic when they were supposed to be like rubber. And they're driving the car now, and they're actually, I think, doing car shows with the car. Cars from the 80s already doing car shows. It was one of my favorite things when I was exploring the abandoned farms and the abandoned homesteads. I love to come across the old vehicles, the old abandoned vehicles. They were super interesting. I think there were a couple of abandoned videos that I did that had car graveyards. Oh, so much fun, right? And yet, a lot of those bodies of those cars are worth lots of money. Probably not now, because even when I was coming across them, pretty rusty, but the chrome stays nice, like the bumpers and the lights and the tail ends and stuff. And I bet you a lot of the interiors of these cars are still salvageable. Maybe some of the car seats and stuff like that. I watched Curiosity Incorporated. I don't know if any of you guys watch Curiosity Incorporated. Kind of does what I would like to do. Um, is he's a reseller, and he does auctions, and he buys lockers, and he buys estates. He even buys hoarding houses, and he clears out hoarding houses, and he auctions it all off. He actually paid for a house. He's got a whole bunch of collector's cars now. He's got a whole bunch. I think he's got like 500 subscribers on his channel. He's got a beautiful family, and he's able to create this magnificent life for himself through his YouTube channel. And I thought, oh, I would just love to do that. Just do provincial parks, right? Fix up an RV or an old minivan and just, right, take my show to the road. That would be so much fun, especially for my retirement, right? But there are other things that I love, right? And a lot of that, being out on the road, being in the provincial parks, being on, right? It wouldn't have allowed me to get the lessons in, to sit in to some conversations. I said this week might be the last of the Carl Jung that I'm going to do. There's another character. I didn't think I would be able to digest his content. I don't know if you guys know who Carl Jung is, but I didn't think I would be able to digest his content. I had been in his content a few times, and it was just like Chinese to me. I didn't understand any of it, and it didn't interest me because I didn't understand it. Well, I think a couple of months ago, it came across my path again. I think somebody else was presenting it, and I got it. I got it really, really well. So I kind of been delving in for the past couple of months into Carl Jung. And there's a nut, and he was somebody I never thought I'd be able to get. I thought he was so beyond my understanding. I found him fascinating. I think possibly he went too deep in what he was doing. Like, he was a psychologist, right? So he really delved in with the highly sensitives and the empaths and different personality disorders, and he really dug deep. But I think at the same time, when he did that, he went too deep, right? That's the thing. You got to enjoy what you're doing. And he was enjoying it, but he enjoyed it too much that the other aspects of being human, those things that he enjoyed about being human, they all got put on the back burner. You guys knock me upside the head if you ever see me, right? Just exploring the inside, right? Because I'm creating the best human being I possibly can, right? I don't want to be Carl Jung. But aspects and understandings, oh, for sure, right? For sure. But this is the next guy I'm going to tackle. Where is his book? Where's his book? Where's his book? I've got his book. There it is. I don't know if you guys have heard of this guy. Have you guys heard of this guy? Ah. I haven't read it yet. It's an oldie, this book here. It's not a first edition, I don't think. I'm just going to double check. 1945. I don't know when his first edition came out, but this one is 1990. Oh, it is a first edition. Oh, cool. Okay, I got a first edition here. Pretty cool. That's probably why I bought it. But in the circles I kind of move in, this is somebody, right? This is where the brainiacs go, like Sam Vatkin, and there are a few people, few characters out there that think his insights and his ideas and his stories are true to the point and mind blowing and full of amazing, amazing lessons. So this week is the last week. This week coming up, one more week. Carl Jung will just delve into it. I think I've gotten a lot of, I doubt it very much. I don't even know why I'm saying that, right? Because he delves deep. This guy, right? He lives for his understandings. And that's why I said he probably went a lot deeper than he should have. And he sacrificed himself. He sacrificed the human in him for the inside, right? Right? He really he did lots of work, and hopefully his work will benefit people, right? There was a lot of what he understood and a lot of the things that he was experimenting and he was experiencing fell really well in line to a lot of the way that I think. But as because I believe, right, we're in an evolutionary, what do you call this, where we're expanding, right? Evolution is, we're in the process right now of that switch, right? Evolution is always going on, but there was a point where there was Neanderthals and then there weren't Neanderthals, right? The evolution 40,000 years ago, they can't find any Neanderthals before 40,000 years, right? Right? We've all got DNA, Neanderthal DNA in us, unless we're from Africa, but we all have Neanderthal DNA in us, but the Neanderthals are gone. And my, right, because I worry about where humans are going, that they're not repopulating the world, they're not going off and having babies, and that we're still butting heads and warring and devastating our environment. And it's a learning process for me too, right? Right? I still have a hard time in my recycling. I don't litter, right? Anymore. Like, right? It used to be nothing for me just to throw a candy wrapper or bubblegum wrapper onto the ground, right? When I was a smoker, that I would just throw my cigarette butts out onto the street, right? I didn't have any care, right, for my environment. I think totally different now, right? And kind of penance for what I do, right, or what I've done. I kind of give a little bit that way to show my apology, right, for how I treated the world for probably decades. But we're working in progress, right? We got to be right proud of the effort. It saved my life, that one saying, be proud of the effort, right? Because I never thought that I was good for anything. I never thought that I had anything to contribute. I thought I was just there just to make everybody's life a little bit comfortable. I didn't feel that I was ever going to achieve or be anything myself. Isn't that sad? But lots of people grow up that way, right? Lots of people grow up that way. And thank you and grateful for all those lessons, right? But in saying that, where was I going to go with that? Bring it back to me. Bring it back to me. I lost track. It was somewhere's good, and I was on a roll with it, and I lost it. Okay, let's come into the comments for a moment, see what you guys are chitter chattering about. Like I said, I hope everybody's having a good week, right? Things seem to be settling down a little bit, the little bonuses here and there in the reselling, keeping the groceries in the cupboard. I was able to get some money on the bills last week. I was so proud of myself. Was able to get myself a treat. I was craving whipping cream, you guys. I got a cake mix and a not a quarter, like a pint of whipping cream, and I hand whipped that whipping cream, and I tell you, I absolutely enjoyed it. It's like for 3 days now. All of us kids in this family of mine, we do that where we get a craving for something, we'll think about it for like a week or two, and then we just break down and we just gotta have it in the moment. We have to appease that desire, or it just takes over our minds and we can't get anything done mentally or physically, right? Yeah. Okay, back into the comments. Yeah, but I had that fresh whipping cream tonight. Oh my goodness. Thank goodness. Here, I don't know if in the States, but in here in Canada, they regulate dairy products. So the prices are usually pretty consistent when it comes to things like eggs and cheese and milk and sour cream, and these kind of things that they keep the pricing. I don't know when the prices go higher and lower if they overprice something else in order to make up the difference of what they may or may not be losing, right? But I know it's all regulating, whether you go to a 7-Eleven store or you go to Safeway, right? Milk price is going to be the same. I think that's a good thing, right? Especially when you have kids and stuff, that lots of times we're not able to get to the stores during the store hours, and in the middle of the night you can always send somebody to the corner store, and they're not going to pay an arm and a leg to get milk on the kids cereal, right? Okay, let's come back in here. How far back do I have to go? um Okay, we'll start here because it's the longest one. Andrew says, just today I saw an abandoned house video and there was a 1950s Packard in the garage. Quite a car. I like those big Lincoln Continentals from the 1960s. I had a car. My first car was a Toyota Celica. Absolutely just loved this little sports car. I got it for $500. A little sports car, no bigger than my desk, right? And I was 300 pounds. I sold this car twice. I had this car 3 times before I drove it into the wreckers, and I traded it for this big royal blue Monaco. It was a Monaco, but it looked like a mafia car. One of those cars with the big round hoods on the top and the round hood on the front, the big white tires. I had that car, and it was a mafia car for sure. And I traded my car, my little sports car, out of the records, because at the end of I had that car for, oh my goodness, I probably had that car for at least 5 or 6 years. And I remember selling that car to my friend, and then she got a new car. So she sold me my old car back to me. I drove that car, oh my goodness, for absolutely ever. But by the end, the side panels of the car, when you go down the highway, they would flip up. And it would be like an airplane. My side panels would be like wings going down the highway. Pretty dangerous. The police never stopped me or anything in it, right? Um, but yeah, you just brought that memory of my first car, the Toyota Celica, but it only led into the conversation because of that big car, the Chrysler, right? Was it a Chrysler? Oh, Lincoln. Yeah, so those big cars. Uh the Packard, that's an old one. A really terrific car was the 1956 Chrysler Norseman, a concept car of which only one was ever made. It was made in Italy, never to America because it was on the Andrea Doria when she sank. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine how much that car would be worth? I wonder if the Andrea Doria, what the condition of that ship is right now. Have we heard anything about it? That's a good question to ask Google. I've been asking Google some really, really amazing questions, but I'd like to know what the condition of the Andrea Doria is right now. Right? If it's salvageable, or where it sank, the salt water probably did a job on the vehicle, but you never know. Uh, but yeah, super. Like Kathy says, that's super interesting. I've got a good story about ship sinks. It's a good one. It's a good one, too. Should I tell it now? I was just going to tell another story because let me see if I can find it here. I saved it, the whole page, because it was so interesting. I had asked Google a question. I get this, I have regular Google, right? Google Assistants. But being in the betas and stuff every once in a while, um, I get to try new things out. And so I got I get to go in depth in some subjects. They know I'm a big Googler. Right? You guys, I'm sure you guys can kind of figure out that I'm big on Googling because I always just like what Andrew did here right now about the Andrea Doria. Like, I'm interested in that now. So I want to go and do a little bit of research in it, right? But I did that same thing in asking Google a question. And my question was, how close are uh, how close are Homo sapiens to their next physical evolution, right? And it tied into exactly my concern is what this AI learning, right? What the digital age, it's moving things so fast that it's making it so that we're being tripped up into the next stage right now. That's why it's so important for us to stay connected, right? Online, that we stay connected with what's going on with innovation and stuff because it's going to offer up opportunities where we're going to be able to get a little bit of help because I suspect that all of us being online and what we're being online for is tripping a big part of the world's population up, right? Like the being stuck in the video games. Like, what's God's idea in having such a large part of the world's population being stuck in video games, right? There's got to be a reason for that, whether it's just that you want to get them through without them being able to see the scary town. This is an idea I was thinking. Maybe it was for them that they were going to be so good with the buttons and the controls and stuff that they're the ones that are going to be in the spaceships circling the earth, right? Being able, like space invaders, to take out anybody that decides that they want to take over the world. I don't know. There's reasoning in absolutely every aspect of how the world is going. We spend so much time about grumbling about what's going on with the world rather than just accepting that things are going on with the world. It's how I look at my prime minister. It's how I look at President Trump. These are catalysts. These, right? They're following orders, whether they're following orders from God or their wives or, right? Whatever, that they're getting this information, that's their movement, right? And that's not something, right? Cindy doesn't have a say. It's not like I can phone up the prime minister and say, hey, I don't like what you're doing. That's why we have the voting system, just to make sure that these people don't get in if we don't want them. But if they're getting in, there's a reason for that. And we spend so much time in the questions of it, right? We can take away from the more important questions. Is my question that I had for Google a useless question? I don't think so, right? Because it ties into exactly what's going on with mankind, with white humans right now, because we are in that stage where we are being pulled into the age of AI learning, where we're being pulled into technology that's going to make it so we don't have to do a lot of things. Might even get to the point where we don't have to work anymore, that there'll be a universal wage every 2 weeks for everybody, right? But how will that set us back? Will we emotionally and mentally be able to cope with not going to work 9 to 5? Will our muscles tighten up and constrict and, right? Will we not talk to each other anymore? Right? I think it's more likely that we won't talk to each other because we're online and we're just typing stuff in and we're letting AI talk for us, that at some point, like those useless organs, right? And this isn't a useless organ. This is one of the senses, isn't it? Taste and talking. It's It's our way of connecting. And quite possibly, we could have no mouth because there's no need for it because we're all doing it, right? Technically and mentally, right? Without recognizing what we're doing to ourselves emotionally. And this is something we're going to find out pretty fast because we are being pushed into our next stage of evolution. Listen to this. Okay, my question was, how close are human sapiens to the next physical evolution? The answer is humans are constantly evolving, and genetic studies suggest this process may be happening faster than ever before due to the rapid cultural and technical changes. See how they included cultural, right? And technological changes. They say cultural, it's because we're this close to each other now, right? In this moment, I can talk to somebody in India or Turkey or the Philippines, right? That we might have uh, an opportunity to make some tremendous movement, right? Right now, if we, right, spend less time on things that we don't have any control over, right? Instead of going downtown with that stick with the big sign on it saying something nasty about somebody, right? Marching up and down. And I'm not even putting, right, because Sharon will be down my throat for sure. Because she's one of those people. It's one of the things that I admire about Sharon is the fact that she has these ideals that she fights for, right? And she doesn't like fight for, and she doesn't yell at people, but she protests in her presence, right? In these rallies and in her writings and stuff like that. So I got to be careful what I say there. Okay, so getting back to this. Um, the study suggests that the process may be happening faster than ever before due to rapid cultural and technological changes. Evolution is a gradual process, and we have been in the process now for 200,000 years, Homo sapiens, right? We have been around for a long time, and yes, we have changed, right? We have other species that have kind of blended with us. We've got between 2 and 3% Neanderthal in each and every one of us. We've got Denisovans, right? Or Desovan. Well, I call them Denisovans, right, instead of Desovans. But however you want to pronounce the word, we've got those genes in us, and we also have the archaics, right? And when I say the archaics, I mean those very first species of humans in us. And that's not to include, right, what God brought into us and how we've evolved since, because we have evolved since. That's the whole point in why we're moving into this evolution now, is because we're moving so fast and we have to find solutions so that we're able to better emotionally handle it and be able to handle whatever those changes are, because it is about changes. And if they do a universal wage for everybody, how are you going to entertain yourself if you don't have to work anymore? I'm grateful. I don't have a physical job that puts the roof over my head, but that doesn't mean that I'm not working constant. And so we all need those things, whether you're setting goals, dreams, ambitions, or whether you want the simple things in life, like when I plan my trips in September, those kind of goals, that we always have things that we have things to look forward to, the things that we can stay busy in, right? And not just stay busy for the sake of being busy, but staying busy for the sake of expanding, right? Moving ourselves a little bit into the next stage of evolution, because we always know, right? When you step into that mix, that's the scariest part, right? We want to get into it and we want to settle into the routine, to the new way of things moving. And yeah, so evolution is defined as a change in a population's gene pool over time, not necessarily the large scale physical transformations often depicted in the media. While modern medicine and technology have reduced some traditional selective pressures like famine and disease, human activities create new ones. Isn't that the truth? And other mechanisms like genetic drift continue to drive change. So change is ever moving, it's always going on. And because we are in that age of AI learning, right, we're getting super smart. And the thing is, our brains are actually getting physically smaller, not bigger. So it's compacted. It's lots of that is being shelved and compressed and right. Um, as we expanded up to now, we our heads have always gotten bigger, bigger, bigger to adjust to our bigger brains, right? But yeah, as of recently in our changes, right? Actually, parts of our neck have been realigned to make space for our bigger brains, right? So so that's interesting. Yeah, not as interesting as the Andrea Doria though. I'm looking forward at the end of my life to going in and doing a little bit of googling on that. But I found that super interesting, you know. Oh, this is interesting, the adaptation to diet. You know, mankind is not done evolving, right? We've just invented how to make petri dish meat, petri dish hamburger. Are you guys going to eat that stuff? Oh my goodness. I don't think I have to in my generation. They're going to make it really, really inexpensive, and they'll probably put the low income, um, the low income target customer as the first customers of this meat. It's already in the market. Yuck, right? Right? Meat that has been engineered. It's kind of crazy, but this is the world that we live in. And the fact that we're population is still getting bigger and bigger, we have more mouths to feed, more mouths to feed too. And if they can get that nutrition to the main line of the population of the world, right? We can probably bring the cost down quite a bit if it becomes popular. If it doesn't become popular, it just becomes a cost, right? Because there's a lot of production and research and machinery being put into it. But it's like, you know, when you first bought the your phone, right? Oh, that's not a good analogy. When you first got the calculators, well, that's not a good analogy either, because you can get them for $1 now, right? But when anything comes out, when the Nintendo first came out in the late 80s, there we go. When the Nintendo first came out, might have been the early 90s, but when Nintendo came out, they were so expensive. Nobody could afford them. Everybody stood in line for the Nintendo, right? But as the production of the Nintendo got more popular and everybody wanted it, right? Then you're buying stuff in wholesale. You're able to make a plant and put everybody on minimum wage, and you're able to bring those costs down, and things end up being a whole lot, whole lot cheaper in the mass production of something, right? So this is what has to happen when it comes to this modified, right, created meat. It's I think it's something that's needed. There are a lot of people out there not even eating healthy, even middle class. Like, oh my goodness, I went to the grocery store and I'm just a window shopper when it comes to the meat department because it's not affordable, right? Right? Makes me wonder if, sausages and hamburger and turkey are my favorite foods because they're pretty, or meats because they're inexpensive, right? That maybe the reason I haven't had a steak since I was a little teeny weeny kid, right, was because of the cost of it and not because I didn't like steak. I don't believe that's the case, right? I've never been a red meat person in the least, right? I barely, I was going to say I've always been about wieners and sausages, like a really bad meat eater, right? But I did get sick last year on wieners. So wieners have cut down to almost minimal. I think I had like a couple, when I went camping in September, I had some wieners, but on the norm, right? And I loved hot dogs. They were my favorite thing in the whole world, but can't eat them anymore, right? Because of that experience. And I was really sick for a couple of days there. I couldn't even get out of bed. I suspect that it was food poisoning. But when I backtracked everything that I had eaten, the only thing that it could have been were those wieners. So I couldn't bring myself to eat wieners after that. And then I took it as a lesson of, oh my goodness, Cindy, there's no protein in wieners, right? You had to come off the wieners. And there you go, you're off the wieners. Okay, but that's what I was saying here is this is what I'm going to tackle. I might do a few videos first. I haven't even listened to his content. I've listened to people talk about him, but not the depths of his content. So I don't even know what to expect, but I do know it's going to be next week. So I'll probably watch a couple of videos. I might listen to one of his short stories because this is a short stories. This is supposed to be his best book. But again, I don't know anything about him. I judged, right, in that saying it's just going to be too heavy for me. It's just going to be like Carl Jung. I'm not going to understand it. But now that I can understand Carl Jung, it's time. I'm not saying to move up because maybe I like Carl Jung more than I like this Dostoevsky. I can't even pronounce his name, but that's the challenge for next week. Okay, let's just come back in the comments here. I'm coming down. I'm coming down. I had to frock the tank and change the fuel pump in my truck this week. The dreaded nightmare job. Yeah. And see, for women, we say these are the kind of guys we want to marry, right? The ones who know how to do this stuff, save money. We don't have to buy new trucks, right? We don't have to take the trucks to the shop and spend all the grocery money, right? We just marry guys that can get the job done themselves. I'd like to say that was the case with me. I didn't go that route, right? You know, my husband was cute, but he couldn't even remember garbage day 4. Oh my goodness, right? We used to get notices. We were in the military. We lived in the military queues, right? The headquarters was always pinning these notices onto my front door of my house because he couldn't even mow the grass. He couldn't even keep the grass because you had to keep it at a certain level. Otherwise, you would get dinged for it. Yeah, but we were always getting notices, and it was a big joke because my husband, he would just totally ignore these notices until I would end up going to cut the grass because then I thought, oh my goodness, we're going to be in such big trouble. And especially when his friends would come over to visit, like on Sundays when we'd have like football day where all the guys would come over to our place, sit in the front room and drink beer and watch football games. And I'd be in the kitchen cooking lasagna or stew or something for everybody. But, these guys would come in and they would bring things, right? They used to bring me bottles of beer and stuff like that because I used to make beer bread and all the guys used to make beer. So they wanted to see whose beer made the best bread. So every week I'd use one of the other guys's beer, right? And they all made their own beer. And when they come over, they would throw things up in the air when they come into the yard, and then they would fall onto their bellies in our grass, and they would go incoming, and they would crawl in the grass like it was the jungle. It was the funniest thing ever, but it was very embarrassing. And of course, the neighbors weren't big fans of our house because they all had pretty yards and stuff like that. I wasn't much of a gardener. I worked in the bars and the nightclubs, right? I was up at night. I wasn't up during the day to decorate yards, gardening. I think I have a green thumb. Everything I plant turns out well. I just don't enjoy it, so I don't do it. And because I believe plants need attention, right? They need love. They need to be talked to, right? They need to be watered. I was I was bad. Okay. Um 70 years old and did this job alone in 2 days. Oh my goodness, Earl. 70 years old. Do you like working on the vehicles, Earl? Do you like working on the vehicles? That's one thing that's missing these days. I used to talk a little bit about it, in my community when I was working in that thrift store. You know, it's a lost thing, because when I was a kid, the mums always taught the kids how to sew, taught the little girls how to cook and how to bake and how to garden. It's a little bit different here in Manitoba. Men garden more than the women do, but I'm from BC and gardening seems to be more of a female thing than a male thing. Um, but but these are things that you don't find anymore. Like the parents aren't teaching the kids these necessities that every child really does need. I believe family studies should be starting in kindergarten because we need to find out where the kids are socially and emotionally in their learnings, right? And we're just not getting that information, and those kids are not getting the help that they need, and the parents are not being noticed till the kids are already in middle school. Even the damage that they've done to the kids because they haven't contributed anything valuable that will help them out in the transition of going to school, and then from going to school into getting to work, right? Most kids are growing up in dynamic families where they've only got one parent, and that parent is being both mother and father and provider, putting the roof over their head, right? Going to the parent teachers meetings if that's what they're doing, because if they don't have time, if they've only got a couple of hours on Thursday and that's the only couple of hours they have for the whole week and that's parent teacher day, I don't know, right? Are they going to take that time to rest, or are they going to go invest that in that difficult decision, right, to sacrifice a little bit of well-being for themselves for the well-being of their kids, right? I don't know. I just would just like to see mindset in the school system, right? We are expanding culturally now. I do believe that these ideas when it comes to being prejudiced, they're going to be defunct. They're going to be kind of useless because of this digital age, because we are this close to each other now. Here in Canada, we have been diverse culturally for quite a while now. I think in North America generally, we are very culturally uh, accepting of each other and relying on each other. We have to rely on each other, right? That's our survival. And I think, especially in the kids in the 80s and 90s, they did a really, really good job, in socially accepting each other and their differences. And I think this is why we have a little bit of a chance now to do some good, right? By what we've stepped in because of AI learning, because of this advancement in our evolution. But this advancement, it's going to be scary and it's going to be hard. And I think a lot of people are going to go cuckoo over the whole situation. So there's a lot of safety that's got to be considered into that, and this baby spoons and the baby steps that we can slowly digest things, tolerate things, come to terms with things, right? Until we're excited to see what the next move is going to be, right? Because just things are just going to get pretty fast now. It's already getting pretty fast. We are doubling our smartness almost every single year now, right? Not everybody. There's still spots in the world. And because, again, it's it's the class that we have, right? Each one of us is in a different category of acceptance to each other or unacceptance to each other, right? But we're learning, we are getting better. I know it looks like, right, that we're going down the pot, but I believe, right, and I'm sure that lots of people would agree that nothing is getting by God, right? That he knows exactly what's going on. But because the human in us that doesn't really understand sometimes, we get to make choices, right? The solutions have to kind of entail those choices that we have made that have switched things up, like this age of AI learning. I'm looking at it like an opportunity, right? And I don't have all the answers. I don't know what's happening to all those kids on the video games, what's going to happen to them, right? In fact, I don't even know what's going to happen with me, but I do understand that I'm creating the best human being I possibly can, not the best, right? Technically inclined um, or expert in any any one topic, right? I think that just being proud of the effort, right? Just trying in what's needed, but we don't really know in the moment to moment what we need, right? That's why we have to be able to learn to fly by the seat of our pants to make those decisions in the moment. And I'm trying to be more in that mix rather than searching out the answers like on this Google, right? Um, but it was such a good question and it offered up so much more information. Here's another one. Disease resistance. Genetic variances that provide resistance to diseases like malaria or the bubonic plague have become more common in affected populations over time. Like so many changes in our choices and in in curious inventiveness that we are creating solutions for problems, right? That we are creating food, right? Like the petri dish ground beef. But we did that to the strawberries, didn't we? We did it. The strawberries, nobody ate them. They were like little tiny huckleberries. Take forever to collect enough strawberries to make a jar jam. But now we can get strawberries like this, can't we? Right? And if we got those little ones, we'd be like, what's this? I'm not paying for this, right? What we did with the bananas, every country in the world eats bananas. But there was a time when bananas were not even edible, right? Because they had big pumpkin seed type seeds inside of them, and the meat in them were like tough rubber, like, and we modified, and now it's what, one of the world's favorite fruits in the whole world is the banana. So we're not even finished, not even close to creating the world. There are lots of things to be invented, right? But it's just a matter of, right, riding those waves, adapting and conquering, and just being excited and curious to see where we're going to go in our next stage of evolution. We're in it, and we're all going to be going through it in different stages, aren't we? Right? There are some kids who don't even get to school, that can't read, don't know the alphabet, can't count to 10, don't know who Jesus is, or don't know what plumbing or electricity or running water is, right? It's going to take a little bit more time for some people to be able to evolve. But in the end, right, if you have a little bit here and a little bit here, I think, right, we're all going to evolve, right? It's just a matter of riding those waves and Googling those questions, asking those questions, try and get the heads up. There's nothing wrong with being a little bit of a prepper, right? Not like crazy fanatical prepper, but being prepared, right? Being prepared for the possibility. If we had a 2 month heat wave where it was so hot that the water taps were just going drip, 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 how long would it take you before you decided to get in the car and go find yourself a pond or a lake or something and start filling up containers, right? It's in that adapt and conquer in the moment of the problems that we, right, find our best solutions. We show our best selves. We get to be the examples for others. Okay, you guys, let's just come into these comments. Oh my goodness, I'm just halfway down. I'm just going to skip all these little shorties, you guys, because I know you're just yapping at each other in that. And actually, that would really be fair. Otherwise, we're just going to listen to Andrew's comments here because his comments are always insightful. Oh, you're still talking about cars. Okay, so I don't feel bad on that. Andrew just says we could pass that. Um, a really terrific car was the 1956 Chrysler Norseman. Never even heard it. A concept car of which only one was ever made. It was made in Italy, never to America because it was on the Android. Oh, okay, Andrew. Yeah, so I can go down here because we already talked about it. I've already written it down, Andrew. I'm going to be doing a little bit of research on the Andrea Doria. Oh, okay. Real quick. Do I have a real quick? Okay, I have 2 minutes, you guys. Quick story. I was a manager in a restaurant, and I had this couple used to come in all the time. We'd have like senior hour and senior meals. It was like Perkins. They always had senior meals at a certain time. And I'd be working, I'd be working, and this one gentleman used to come in with his home care worker all the time. He was like 102 years old. He was really, really, really old. And but I loved, he had all his noodles and we'd have great talks and everything. And he was one of my regulars, came in all the time, right, with his home care worker. And he was telling me the story of his wife. And he came over on on Andrea something. Was it Andrea something? No, it wasn't Andrea something, because I'm thinking of what, maybe it was Andrea Doria. Sounds so familiar. But he came over on a ship. It had a sister ship, and it was during just before World War II. And he came over to start a homestead for his family, and he left his family in Scandinavia or something like that, in Switzerland, one of those countries, right? And he left his family there, but they had gotten their tickets already, right? For 6 months later or something. They were going to come 6 months later after he got the house built and got to the land, and he would meet them at the station. But the war started, and the ship that the husband, who was now 102 years old, came on, he got here, but later on during the course of the war, right, it got hit and sunk, and so it scared his wife to get on a ship to come to Canada, because the sister ship got sunk by a torpedo, right? And he went to, because there was no mail, no way of getting hold of him or anything, he went to pick her up at the train station. And when he went to the train station, he got a newspaper, and the sister ship got torpedoed and sunk. And he thought his wife and his son had died, right? And he was tormented by that, totally devastated, like his dream of building this homestead. He didn't know what he was going to do, if he was going to go back to the old country or if he was going to stay. And but his wife knew, because of the mail system, that how her husband was going to react when he found out that the ship went down. But he didn't know that she had canceled the ticket because she was afraid, right? So she got on the next ship, and she wasn't even quite sure. She knew the town that he was in, but she had no idea where he was. He was out in the country somewhere. And she stayed in that town and asked everybody questions, right? Until she got an answer to a possibility of where her husband might be. He said no matter what he went through for his entire life, no matter what tragedy, what terrible thing, and he said there were lots of things in his life that went wrong, lots of tragedies, lots of mishaps. But he said no matter what he ever had to go through, he would always remember the happiest day in his life was when he saw his wife and his child walking up that road towards his homestead. Because, right, in those days, it took months to get mail, and he had no idea. So that story came from the story that Andrew was telling about the Andrea Doria. And it's funny that this name Andrea kind of sits in my mind as to being the ship. I don't know if it was torpedoed during the Second World War, or if it even had a sister ship. I can't remember the name of the ships exactly. I wish I could, because I love that story. It's a love story, number one. And it's a story of appreciating what life gives you. Sometimes we need these lessons in life in order to appreciate truly what we have. Okay, we're going to leave it at that, you guys. I didn't quite finish all the comments in there. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming into my live Thank you, Earl, for popping in and joining in on the conversation. And yeah, Cindy, cars are all that matters. Well, if you asked me, I would have agreed with you when it was in September and I was looking for a car to go on my trip, right? Cars are important. These are luxuries that we as humans have become accustomed to. I love the invention of the car. I'm so grateful to live in this time and age that I had the opportunity to be able to jump in a car and go off wherever I wanted to, right? Lots of people didn't. Just like that story I told you, that gentleman, he had that homestead. He lived out there. He didn't even have a phone, running water, didn't even know if his wife and son was alive, right? And we got to appreciate the luxuries. We take them out. We have expectations, right? Now we expect our phone, we expect the TV and YouTube and our laptops, and we expect these things, not recognizing, right, what luxuries and what privileges they actually are. Okay, you guys, everybody, you have a great night. I will be back tomorrow for What's My Good Cheer, 9 o'clock Central. If you want to come in and say hi, I know Earl pops in every once in a while. Melvin pops in every once in a while. Kathy pops in every once in a while. Always appreciated in the company. If not, you guys, we'll see you. We'll see you next Sunday. Okay, everybody. Bye.